Hello, hello. If you are just joining us, we are getting started for today's session on parent communication. My name is Lexi Longeri. We also have today presenting with us Miss Liberty Hatcher. She's one of our amazing TPD coaches here at the Early Learning Coalition. And we have Ms. Shai. She's also going to be helping us today by running the chat box. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you're dropping them in the chat box. So today's session is promoting positive practices, specifically on parent communication. So just a couple of housekeeping items real quick. If you're able to turn your cameras on, great. If you're able to verbally respond with us today, fabulous. If not, we completely understand. You guys might be in classrooms with kiddos who are sleeping, so you can't have your camera on, or you might not be able to speak verbally. Make sure that you are engaging with us in the chat box, ask questions, share your personal experiences. This one's a hot topic, I know for sure. Parent communication can certainly be a challenging thing for some teachers. So if you need to change your microphone or your speaker, that little caret button next to your microphone button is where you will change those functions. For cameras, make sure you can have them on if you can. If you can't, the red line through the camera button means it is off. We cannot see you. We also have our chat function. You guys are familiar with this at this time. So go ahead and, oops, sorry, move the button. Go ahead and put in the chat box for us, what is your favorite thing about being an early childhood professional? Or you can answer some of the questions that we did on the first slide. What are you most excited to learn about today? So we'll be watching those chat boxes, seeing what kind of responses we're going to get. And we'll be reading those as we start our session today. So today's agenda and objectives, we're going to define parent communication. We'll share our current successes and challenges in some breakout rooms. Depending on how many people actually join us today, we might just do a group discussion together here in the main room. And then we'll explore some strategies for, effective parent communication. And we'll share some resources with you guys to hopefully help with that. And then we will also discuss and develop some next steps, some action steps to use some of the things that we are working with today. All right, I'm going to run a poll on parent communication. Let me get this started. And so parent communication is important because you're going to choose all of the responses that apply. So we've got allows parent-teacher partnership to better meet child's social emotional needs, allows parent-teacher partnership to better meet child's academic needs, allows the teacher to better connect with the child's home life and culture to their education, and allows the teacher to ask other parents what their opinions are on other teachers or children's issues. So go ahead and choose which ones you think match the best for this question. And give us just a few seconds for people to respond.
Can you check more than one?
Yes, absolutely. Check all that apply. We're about halfway through now. Got just a couple left. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end our poll and share our results. So majority of us stated that it is the first three. The last one allows the teacher to ask other parents about what their opinions are on other teachers or children's issues. That one's not going to be our response today. We really want to try and make sure we're sharing information with parents about their own children and sharing information with other teachers only about, the children, not necessarily sharing information that isn't meant to be shared. But the other three are accurate. meeting children's social emotional needs, meeting their academic needs, and making sure that we address and connect their home life and culture with their education. Thank you all for participating in that poll for us. Now stop that. And we're going to go ahead and share our early learning teaching practices. So for today's session, many of you are familiar with our early learning teaching practices. These are a set of practices that were adopted from a set of evidence-based research that when we do them as intended, these will promote those positive outcomes for children that we're looking for. So these teaching practices are simply things that you as a teacher will say or do in the classroom. And specifically for parent communication, this section is going to be talking about regularly communicating with other members of the instructional team. And that is going to include co-teachers, assistants, staff, families, special services like occupational therapists, speech therapists, those kinds of things. To learn more about children's interest and to inform instruction. So, we want to make sure that we're inviting families to share their personal values and preferences for sending and receiving information. We also want to share information about the child's classroom activities and progress and accomplishments within the classroom. And then, including collaborating with families too, to plan lessons, establish objectives, and address children's individual needs. So today's session, we are going to be looking at what are some best practices to make sure that our families are involved and are an active part of their children's education. This is also going to tie in with class. So class is our, actually, let me run another quick poll real quick. Let me see. How many of you are from, what's your current familiarity with class? Are you really familiar with it? You've taken the class group coaching course or the making the most of classroom culture. Are you kind of familiar? You've heard about it, but you're not sure what it is, or you've never heard of it before. See what today's group looks like. I've got a little over half of the responses in. There's just a couple more seconds here. Welcome everybody who just joined. We are so happy to have you. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end our poll, and it does look like the majority of our group today is familiar with class group code with class, and just a small percentage is kind of familiar. So with that group, I'm glad to hear that everybody is at least somewhat familiar with it. Class is our classroom assessment scoring system tool, which is the assessment tool used to measure teacher-child interactions within a classroom. This is the program tool used for program assessments, and it's what we use for your class score, your program assessment score. And so when we talk about class dimensions, we really are using them when we talk about parent communication to make sure that we're being sensitive to our children's needs. We have a better understanding of their academic and their developmental needs, and we're addressing those in the classroom as often and as frequently as we can. And that's going to be most supported when we are having those conversations and we're having those meetings and having that communication with the families. I do just want to say, we say in this training today, parent communication, but when we say parent communication in today's session, we're talking about any person that oversees a child's academics, their physical needs, their emotional needs, anybody who takes care of that child. It can be biological mothers and fathers, it can be step parents, it can be grandparents, it can be aunts, uncles, cousins, really any adult that is helping to oversee a child's academic, emotional, and social needs. So when we say parent communication, it's not just biological parents that we're talking about today. So I did just want to make that side note before we get started. So when we define parent communication, this is going to be the methods in which we use to communicate with parents and families about their child's overall and academic well-being. This is going to be those trusting, respectful, goal-oriented relationships between staff and parents that are essential to help ensure that we have that healthy growth and development for all of the students in our classroom. Parent communication, when we use it, we're going to be able to see that teachers can better attend to the individual needs of children. They're also going to be able to build those good parent-teacher relationships that allows the parent to be an active part in their child's learning. And teachers can better connect the child's culture and home life to the classroom. Does anybody want to either put in the chat box or come off of mute and say one way that we can connect children's cultures and home life in the classroom? Okay, I'm going to watch that chat box. Ms. Kira said with food. Yes, with food, we can definitely have families send in food from their personal cultures. They're from, their favorite food from their homes that they like to make.
You
Thanks,
can have
Kira.
a parent come and talk about
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a fabulous way too. Come and talk to the children about their home culture, whether it's, another country that they're from, or a different, holiday that they celebrate. Come and talk to the kids about it. Thanks, Ms. Deborah. So we got food. We can do toys. We can do families coming in to talk to the children. I know some schools have like a culture day annually where families come in and share their culture with one another with food and with activities and games and things like that. So lots of different ways that we can tie that in to the classroom. All right, so before we go into breakout rooms, there's just this short video that I'm going to share, and it talks briefly about building parent-teacher communication. And so just let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. I am. And it's just a very short video that we're going to watch, and talks about why it's important for us to have effective parent communication. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
That was shared. It tells us what parents are looking for, but that's a general overview, and that's a great place if you have no data and you can't talk to parents. But what we found is that our parents don't always know the lingo of what social emotional learning is, and we could have an idea and we're teaching one thing and they're like, you're not doing what we wanted. And so we've had to scale it back and say, what's the best way to contact parents? We've given surveys in the past, they've worked. Zoom has worked for a while, but people are zoomed out. And so we've had to say this one family, like really get granular. One family may like text. One family needs a phone call. 3 families need to only talk to the staff member that they have a great relationship with, because if someone else calls them, they're not going to pick up or they're not going to be available. And so I just think that it's about being creative, and it's not doing the same exact thing and expecting a different result. And just because parents don't fill out a Google survey that we use in the workplace that works for half of us, doesn't mean that the parents aren't invested and that they don't want more for their kids and they don't know what they want. So it's up to the providers to figure out a different way that works best for all of the parents, not just the ones who respond best to email or respond the best way that you like to communicate.
All right, we're going to go into breakout rooms, and just to share kind of briefly, what are our current successes and challenges with parent communication? What are some of the ways in which we communicate with our families? What are some of the barriers that you think happen with parent communication? Are there certain families that no matter what you do, you just can never get a hold of the families or the parents? And so we're going to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to set these breakout rooms up. When it prompts you, you're going to click that little blue button that says join breakout room. When you're ready to leave the breakout room and come back to the main room, click leave room. Make sure that you click leave breakout room and not leave meeting. If you click leave meeting, you're going to get kicked out of the Zoom session and you'll have to rejoin us again. All right, with that, is there any questions before we go into breakout rooms? 10. All right. These 1, 2, 3. All right. This looks like our group, and we're going to just break out for about, let's do 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and share what our current successes and challenges are for communicating with our parents. I'll see you guys back here in about 4 minutes. Does anybody, how did the conversations go in the breakout rooms? Ms. Shai, how did your group go?
We had a really good discussion. We talked about Ms. Kiera and Ms. Teresa kind of shared the same successes and challenges, whereas like what's successful is like being able to get in contact with the parents via like a learning, not a learning app, but like a parent communication app. So Jupiter Ed and I think Child Pilot it was, but then also they had the same challenge where it's like hard to discuss behavior challenges with parents. They find that to be a bit difficult. And then we got pulled back here into the group. So, but it was getting good.
Those conversations are always nice to have. Thanks, Ms. Shai. How about you, Ms. Fonda? How did your discussion go?
Yeah, same here. Ours was getting good and it got turned off as well. But we talked a lot about the problems of just parents coming in and not wanting to communicate or just being absent, on their phone. And even I think it was Miss Evelyn who shared that she had a conversation with a parent and they were like wanting her to pretty much do everything and not want to be involved. So just the stresses of the parents not wanting to communicate.
Right. Thanks, Kwanda. How about you, Miss Liberty?
Miss Hannah shared Jupiter. It was my first time hearing about it. It's like Skyward, which I'm familiar with my older kids. And that's the way that they've been communicating, sending emails, and it just goes right over to the parents. It's been successful for them.
Good. Glad to hear that. And I hope that some of the resources that we'll have for you guys today is going to be on, having some of those more challenging conversations with parents. We'll have some handouts to give you guys for those more challenging discussions with challenging behavior. So I hope that those resources will be received well and helpful. Glad to hear there was a nice discussion going on. Sorry, it was too short. I never feel like I gave you guys enough time, but glad to hear that we were able to have some good conversation. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Liberty to do our Explore section. And Miss Liberty, do you need me to share my screen or do you want to share yours?
Great question. You can share yours if you'll just click next.
Absolutely.
Slide.
All right, so we're going to go in here.
All right, so let's talk about a few strategies for parent communication. First things first would be to establish that relationship. Kind of maybe typically when the child first enters your center or classroom, a good thing to do could be to send out an email, sort of all about you, share some information of how they can reach you, and share what your classroom culture is like, your beliefs and your values, and what you would like your children to learn from your classroom. A good thing to do is ask parents about what they prefer to use as communication. Do they like Zoom? Do they like email? Or are they texters? Some parents that I worked with in the past is, what's your phone number? Here's my phone number and let's text. Anything that's immediate, text. You want to set up a parent conference, text. So getting to know the parents and seeing what they like. And then when there is a cause for concern, you kind of have that door, your foot in the door with that. And so back when I was a preschool teacher, one of the first things I wanted to do to get to know a child is set up a meeting and get to know their family. What is their home life like? What are their hobbies? What do they do after school? What do they do on the weekends? Just to get a better insight of the family and the child. And then next, maintain consistent communication is very important so that you're connecting with parents. You can do this through a weekly newsletter. My son's teacher, he's in first grade, they do a weekly report. Every Monday, I have a piece of paper that says what they're doing for the week and what materials they could use and how I can help as a parent. And you could even get a little bit more specific by doing a daily report. And then there's pictures in the next few slides of what that looks like. Just to talk about, how the child was physically or emotionally, was something that they really liked today, was something that they needed assistance with, things like that can be included in a daily report. And then always be sure that you keep your contact information up to date as things change. All right. And so as I was saying, moving forward, if there is a concern and if there is, challenging behaviors that come abroad, scheduling a meeting is important. Once you've, taken some observations, made some notes, maybe even tally charts of specific behaviors, you can create a plan to address these concerns. It's very important to be objective, not stating your opinions, just sticking to the facts. And when we are addressing parents, it's important that we're coming to them with strengths first. Think about it, as a person, we want to hear good things. The bad things tend to stick. So if we approach with some positive feedback, we can have a greater chance to share the weaknesses of a child and what we can do next to help. So providing that positive, specific feedback is important. And then address the concerns, share what you've observed, not what you've assumed, straight to the facts. And then it's important to be a listener. Ask the parents what they've done to address any specific behaviors and how they would like you to address the behaviors or concerns. And this just helps parents and teachers have that effective communication. And then lastly, create a plan. As you're having this communication, this parent communication with caregivers and parents, excuse me, discuss strategies that will support the child. What do the parents mostly think they need for their child? How can the teacher help? Where can we come in the middle and meet to help support the child be academically successful? And then as teachers and directors, we can provide resources. Maybe the child needs a stuffy for nap. Maybe they need a safe place for times where they're feeling really emotional and they need a break. And then always track and share progress with parents. This is where we started. This is where we've come so far. And, be positive and share as much information as you can. And then examples can be face-to-face or over the phone, Zoom, email, text, as we said. And then in the next slide, here's an example of a daily report on the left, such as what the child has eaten for the day, and what time they went to nap, what activities, important things throughout the day. And then on the right is like a weekly newsletter, what's happening, special events, reminders, things of that nature. And then when you're writing these emails or notes, we just want you to keep in mind to be polite and simple and fact-based. And this is a resource that will be shared at the end of templates and tips for communicating with parents. And then moving on.
All right, thanks, Ms. Liberty.
Thank you.
All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to take this out of order. Let me stop sharing real quick and let me drop in the chat box some of the resources that we have for you guys today. Let me get this down. What I'd like to do is most of the stuff that we're going to be sharing today is going to be links. So I'm going to drop them in the chat box now. If you have an option to look at the links that I'm giving you, go ahead and feel free to do so. And we will be sending these links in the follow-up email as well. Let's see if these go through. That didn't go through the way I was hoping. Hang on, let's try this again. Do one at a time. And I'm going to open them too, and that way we can share them with you. We've got a little bit of extra time. We're getting towards the end of our presentation already. So I want to share what resources we have with you and then go into the breakout rooms and share which of these resources we think we're going to try out this next week and how we're going to use it. So they are now in the chat box. I'm going to open them in the web. We're going to look at them briefly and see. I just have a brief discussion about which ones we think we would benefit from the most. So the first one that I did drop in the chat box, this is the templates that Ms. Liberty was just talking about. So it's 9 templates for responding to tricky parent emails. So there is a short, brief article about we've all been dealing with challenging parents. Here's some other reminders and good rules of thumb when we are emailing parents and even texting parents. These are some really good tricks and tips. Be brief but polite, assume that they have the best intentions, have a greeting, have a closing, be careful with your response time, right? Sometimes, especially if we're feeling really overwhelmed, it might be tempting to respond immediately, but we might actually need to take a step back and think before we respond to a tricky email. Don't agree or commit to anything you feel weird about over email, and don't put anything in the email you would feel sheepish about defending to your boss, right? Or even if you're a director, make sure we're not putting things in there that we wouldn't want somebody else to see. So there's a couple templates here. I didn't know about the task quiz field trip event. I want to know why my child got this grade. We may not have grades in our classes, but these are still just some nice templates about how to use nice verbiage and structure when addressing parents in certain situations. I want to opt my child out of this lesson or book because I find it offensive. Your class is too hard for my child. Please give my child an extra day on the project. So a lot of these are geared towards K through 12 students, but the structures of these emails are very similar to things that we deal with on a regular basis. So we did just want to share this as a resource for you guys to have today. I don't think my child is getting enough homework. Can you send more? We do have some parents I've seen from time to time, even in the early childhood programs, who want a lot of homework for their children because they value academics. And so this might be a way for you to address that. My child told me about a negative interaction with you or a classmate, and then, we're going on a vacation. Can we get the work early? So feel free to use these and look at the structures and look at the suggestions there and think about how you might use them in talking with your parents and communications. The next one we have is it is just a one-page document, and it comes from the National Center for Pyramid Model Implementation. It talks about connecting with families, and it has, again, some structure and suggestions about emailing families or using phone calls or virtual meetings. So having an opening question for them to kind of greet them, see how they're doing for the day, check in with about how they feel their child's progress is going, celebrate the child's progress, identify if there are any new concerns to discuss, make a plan to address any concerns, problem solve together, and then review. Talk about what are some things that we said we were going to do, what are some next steps, who is going to be responsible for those next steps. And then there's some tips at the bottom here for your conversation. So asking open-ended questions, active listening phrases. You don't have to be the expert to solve all the problems. Validate family emotions and thoughts. So that's going to be the next resource you receive from us today. Our third one is talking about engaging with families in conversations about sensitive topics. And this comes from the Head Start program. And so this one is a little bit more lengthier. I believe it's about 8 pages long, but it does have a nice discussion about engaging with families in conversations about sensitive topics. And so using people first language, recognizing that every family has their story, preparing for conversations. So making sure that your environment is set up, making sure you have all your documentation, making sure that you scheduled a designated day and time to have a challenging conversation with families. Those are all really going to be important considerations when we want to have conversations about sensitive topics. Try to be flexible, be present, make sure we're not, we're there and we're free of distractions. Listen carefully to the families. After having conversations, follow up either with an email or a resource for them to take home with them. And then our last resource for today is going to be talking about, again, it comes from the Head Start Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center, or ECLIC, preparing for challenging conversations with families. So the different steps that you might need or consider, so that's going to be your data collection. That's going to be your scheduling a time and a place to have those conversations. Making sure that everybody who needs to be a part of that conversation is there, right? Do we have a family whose both mother and grandmother are active participants in this child's academics? Making sure that they're both able to attend a challenging conversation with you, even if that means that we have to schedule it at a kind of an awkward time. Being able to meet the family's needs and accommodations to support the child the best is going to be our ultimate goal. So those are going to be some resources that we share with you today. After today's session, they are dropped in the chat box right now, and they'll be sent in a follow-up email with today's meeting recording. But we're going to go ahead and get into breakout rooms and just kind of have a brief discussion about what are some next steps? What are some things that we're going to go back and do to make sure that we either find a new way to communicate with our families, we prepare differently for communicating with our families? What's something different? What's our next steps about how we're going to use this information? We're going to come back. We're going to have a little bit of time to kind of brainstorm with one another on some successes and challenges about our next steps and our action plan steps. And so we'll open a little bit for a discussion, because I know we have some directors here, we have some teachers here, and I think it would be important for everybody to hear from one another some thoughts, suggestions, or concerns. So we're going to go into breakout rooms for about 4 minutes to talk about which of these things we're going to use this next week and what our next steps are going to be. And then we'll come back and have kind of a more open discussion about what that's going to look like. All right, I'm trying to share my screen, but I just needed to do breakout rooms. And I think we have about the same. Let me move people around real quick. I'm putting you guys into a little bit different rooms here. Okay, 3. Okay, so we'll go into our rooms for about 4 minutes, talk about next steps, and we'll come back. I'll see you guys back here in about 4 minutes. Recording to wrap up our last part of today's session. So today we did wrap up. We defined parent communication. We talked about why it's important. We talked about different strategies for using effective communication and how to discuss and prepare for those more sensitive, challenging topics. And then you guys did discuss some next steps. We talked about a next step plan for what kind of resources you're going to try and use in your centers. So here's our contact information. It was myself and Miss Liberty presenting on today's session on parent communication. Feel free to give us a call or email us anytime and let us know if you need further supports on this. We do have your evaluation for today's session. So Nishai is going to drop that in the chat box for you guys. When you fill out that evaluation form, your in-service certificate will go automatically to the email that you provide in the evaluation. Please provide us some feedback on today's session so that we can continue to grow and learn and make these sessions more centered around things that you guys want to hear and you want to see. We'll stay on for just a couple more minutes in case anybody has any last minute questions, but that's it for today. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in 2 weeks when we talk about community supports. Thanks everybody for your time. We appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye guys. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Thank
Anna.
you.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.